Some of you may remember the music group The Beatles and their encounter with the Indian guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. Of that relationship, Paul McCartney wrote, "Yeah, well, it's great to be famous. It's great to be rich. But what is it all for?" And in a 2005 interview with our favorite quarterback, Tom Brady, reflected on winning his third Super Bowl and said, "There has to be more than this." And in July 1979, President Jimmy Carter gave a speech reflecting on the difficult times that the U.S. was having with the oil crisis. In the speech, he said, "But we've discovered that owning things and consuming things does not satisfy our longing for meaning." For many other people and in many other forums, we hear people questioning, what is the meaning of life? For those of us who ask those questions, I suggest we look at the teachings found in the Bible, and especially those given us by Jesus to help to find meaning. It is a call to become a disciple of Jesus and to take up our cross. Today's readings invite us to reflect on what is the meaning of our lives. The readings encourage us to become disciples of Jesus, then warn us of what to expect when we become true disciples of Jesus. Before reflecting on the meaning found in the Bible, and specifically the teachings of Jesus, I would like to look at some of more modern reflections on meaning. I will start with the Viennese psychologist Viktor Frankl, who spent several years in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. After his release at the end of the war, he wondered why did he survive and so many others didn't. His reflection led to his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He believed we discover meaning in life by creating a world of doing, by experiencing something such as goodness, truth, beauty, and by experiencing nature and culture. And finally, we find meaning by the attitude we take toward unavoidable suffering. It was through his suffering that he came to understand those things he took for granted, those things that brought meaning into his life. Our modern world focuses on finding happiness through materialism, what we have and not so much what we do. Research is more and more showing that people don't find meaning in things, in what we have, but is found in what we do with what we have. Emily Isfahan Smith reflected on holy men she and her family had encountered and wondered what made them holy. She concluded that their demanding spiritual practice, with its emphasis on self-denial, service, and compassion over personal gain, comfort, and pleasure, elevated them. It made their lives feel more meaningful. Analyzing research on happiness, she found that people are looking beyond happiness in their search for what makes life worth living. The chief findings has been that there is a distinction between a happy life and a meaningful life. Jesus in our Judeo-Christian faith calls us to a meaningful life, which will lead to a sense of a job well done as opposed to simply being happy. To achieve this Christian life of meaning, we are called to be disciples of Jesus, to develop a personal relationship with Jesus. As the lector noted at the beginning of Mass, we are in the 23rd Sunday of Ordinary Time. That is a reminder that we are in ordinary time. We have experienced the birth of Jesus and, more importantly, his death and resurrection. We are inspired to be followers of Jesus. In ordinary time, we learn how to be followers of Jesus, how to be his disciples. Our gospel reading today identifies key requirements to be a true disciple of Jesus. Sister Verna Holyhead identifies 3 conditions for discipleship. First, prefer intimacy with Jesus to all other intimacies. Second, accept the cross, not only in ordinary painful suffering, but also persecution, ridicule, and conflict. And third, surrender possessions and possessiveness. In the gospel, Jesus calls us to hate our parents, spouses, children, family members. This is a jarring reading. Is this what Jesus really meant? As Jesus calls us all to love one another, biblical scholars believe that what Jesus was trying to say through hyperbole in this reading was to love them less than you love Jesus. We must establish and maintain a personal relationship with Jesus that is more intimate than our relationships with our family and friends. Jesus also calls us to take up our crosses. This means we are called to live in a way that calls us to travel the high road, to forgive offenses committed against us, to live simply so others can simply live, and to take responsibility for the moral character of society. In our Catholic faith, we are called to use the corporal works of mercy as our guide, and in doing so, we are carrying a cross. These are listed in the Catechism of the Catholic Church as feeding the hungry, sheltering the homeless, clothing the naked, visiting the sick and imprisoned, and burying the dead. And it goes on to say, among all things, giving alms to the poor is one of the chief witnesses to maternal charity. It is also a work of justice, pleasing to God. And as kind of a side note, today you have the opportunity to feed the hungry by taking an aluminum pan after Mass and making a casserole to feed the hungry at our daily bread. The third item Sister Verna listed was to surrender possessions and possessiveness. And this is an interesting concept. As you recall, Jesus once was approached by a wealthy young man who said, "What do I need to do to find eternal peace?" And ultimately Jesus said, give up everything you have in following me. I'm not so sure Jesus is calling us to all give up everything that we have. But our faith doesn't tell us that having a lot of money is bad. It asks us what we do with the money. Do we use our wealth to buy things for ourselves, or do we use our wealth to help make our community and the world a better place? Pope Francis might ask, is what we are doing good for the environment, or are we making life more difficult for the poor by polluting air and water resources? Jesus calls us to use our wealth to make life a better place for all people. In the gospel reading, Jesus also warns us to prepare for whatever new avenue we take in bearing our crosses. He is invoking the message from today's wisdom reading. We must evaluate what we can do, whether we have the resources to do it before we set out. I believe it is easy to carry a cross when we do it in community, working with others toward a common goal. Clearly, our parish offers a number of ways to work with others to carry out the will of God. If you look on our parish website under Social Justice, then select to Serve with Love, you'll find a list of activities that you could join. Through those ministries, you will develop a personal relationship with Jesus and find meaning in your life. In the final analysis, it's not about learning the meaning of life, but of finding meaning in our lives.